You're changing, not in a dramatic, movie scene kind of way, not with fireworks or grand declarations, but quietly, almost invisibly. You find yourself hesitating in old conversations that once flowed so easily. You feel a distance growing in relationships where you used to feel at home. You catch glimpses of the person you used to be and realize with a pang of sadness that you are no longer them. And maybe you thought growing would feel like pride, like arriving, like standing taller than ever. But instead, it feels a little like grief, a quiet ache you can't quite explain, a bittersweet farewell you never got to say. You're proud of who you're becoming, but you're mourning who you used to be. You're grateful for the path you're on, but you miss the people who can't seem to walk it with you anymore. No one warned you about this part. No one told you that personal growth isn't just about gaining wisdom, strength, or success. It's also about losing things you didn't realize you'd have to leave behind. Versions of yourself, dreams that once felt like destiny, connections that once felt like home. In this video, we're going to talk about that silent goodbye, the grief no one mentions, the hidden fear of outgrowing the people we love, and sometimes the parts of ourselves we thought we'd always be. Because growing isn't just moving forward, it's learning how to hold the beauty of what was even as you step into what's next. And maybe the hardest part of becoming is learning how to let go without losing the love that shaped you. Growth feels like gaining, but often starts with loss. When we think about growth, we imagine it as an addition. New skills, new wisdom, new opportunities, new versions of ourselves. We picture growth as building, layer upon layer, rising higher, reaching farther. And in many ways, it is. But what no one tells you is that every gain begins with a loss. Before you become someone new, you have to let go of who you were. You lose comfort. You lose certainty. You lose the invisible, unspoken agreements you made with yourself and with others about who you were supposed to be. Growth doesn't just ask you to stretch, it asks you to shed. It asks you to look at parts of yourself, habits, beliefs, loyalties, and whisper, "Thank you for getting me here, but you can't take me further." It asks you to confront the spaces where you once felt safe and realize that safety has quietly turned into stagnation. It asks you to love who you've been without letting that love chain you to a version of yourself that no longer fits. And sometimes it asks you to say goodbye without anger, without blame, without clear closure. Just a quiet recognition that you've outgrown something that once fit perfectly. A friendship that no longer understands you. A dream that no longer lights you up. A coping mechanism that once saved you, but now keeps you small. And it's painful. Not because you're wrong for moving forward, but because there's a kind of mourning that comes with realizing you can't take everyone and everything with you. There's no ceremony for this kind of loss. No milestone to mark the moment you realize you're growing faster than the spaces that once held you. It just happens, quietly, in skipped conversations, in misaligned silences, in a growing sense that you are not who you used to be. And not everyone will be able to meet you where you're going. But that's not failure. That's growth. And it's okay to grieve it. It's okay to feel sad about the things you had to leave behind, even if they once felt essential to your survival. Because becoming isn't just about building. It's about releasing, about trusting that what's meant to stay will find a way to grow with you, and what's meant to fall away will leave space for what's coming. Why we fear outgrowing people. We like to believe that the people we love will grow alongside us, that friendships built in childhood, relationships formed in early adulthood, connections that once felt unbreakable, will simply evolve as we evolve. But often they don't. And when you start to grow in ways others can't or won't, a quiet fear creeps in. If I change, will I lose them? If I become someone they don't recognize, will they stop loving me? At the core of it, we are wired for attachment. From the moment we're born, we seek safety in connection. Our brains associate survival with belonging. Being part of a group meant protection. Being cast out meant danger, sometimes death. That ancient wiring still lives inside us, even today, even as adults, which is why the idea of outgrowing people feels almost like a violation of something sacred, a betrayal of an invisible contract. We were supposed to stay the same together. And when you start shifting, when you adopt new values, new dreams, new ways of being, you start to feel the strain of that unspoken agreement. You notice the jokes that used to feel funny now feel sharp. You feel the discomfort when you share something meaningful and they change the subject. You sense the gap widening, not out of malice, but out of misalignment. And part of you wants to shrink back, to downplay your growth, to pretend you're still who you were, just to preserve the bond. Because losing people you love feels like losing a part of yourself. And here's the cruel paradox. The more you grow, the more you risk loneliness, at least for a while. Because not everyone is meant to walk every chapter with you. And not every connection can stretch across the distance of change. But knowing that doesn't make it hurt less. Because even if the growth is right, even if the distance is necessary, the grief is real. The fear of outgrowing people isn't about arrogance. It's about heartbreak. It's about wanting so badly to carry everyone with you into your next becoming, and realizing, painfully, that some doors can only be walked through alone. And that's not failure. It's the cost of authenticity. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to erase the good memories. You simply have to accept you're becoming someone they may not be able to recognize anymore. And that's okay, because real love doesn't demand you stay small. Real love cheers you on, even when the paths diverge. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for them and for yourself, is to keep walking anyway. The hidden grief of outgrowing your old self. It's one thing to outgrow places, to outgrow relationships, to outgrow familiar patterns. But what about outgrowing yourself? The version of you that once dreamed so vividly, the version that found comfort in old routines, the version that once believed certain things would always matter. When you grow, it's not just the world around you that feels unfamiliar, it's your own reflection. You look at pictures from a few years ago and think, who was that? You hear old dreams echoing back at you and wonder, why doesn't that excite me anymore? And underneath it all, there's a soft, aching grief. Because growth means letting go, not just of what no longer serves you, but sometimes of what once saved you. The coping mechanisms you once needed, the goals that once gave you purpose, the identities that once anchored you. You realize you no longer fit inside the story you used to tell about yourself. The character you built with such care feels too small now. The costume you wore with pride starts to feel heavy, restrictive. And even though you know, intellectually, that change is good, emotionally, it feels like mourning. You miss the certainty you used to have, the simplicity of believing you knew exactly who you were, the comfort of being able to name yourself without hesitation. Now, things feel messier, more uncertain, more alive, yes, but also more tender. And there's a loneliness in that. A loneliness that comes not from losing others, but from losing the version of yourself who once made you feel at home in your own skin. No one talks about this kind of grief because it's hard to explain, hard to justify, hard to mourn something you willingly chose to leave behind. But it's real, and it's sacred, because you don't grow by abandoning yourself. You grow by honoring who you were, and then making the brave, aching choice to move forward anyway. You don't dishonor your old self by becoming someone new. You honor them by living fully into the possibilities they couldn't yet imagine. Because every past version of you, every dream you've ever dared to dream, every broken, beautiful, unfinished chapter has led you here. And the greatest gift you can give them is to keep going, not by forgetting who you were, but by carrying their courage with you into everything you're still becoming. Survivor's guilt in personal growth. There's a kind of guilt no one warns you about. A guilt that doesn't come from doing something wrong, but from doing something right. It creeps in quietly in the moments you least expect it. You get the job, you break the cycle, you heal from what once broke you. And instead of feeling only pride, you feel a pang of sadness, a whisper of shame, a subtle ache that asks, why me? Why did I get to move forward when they didn't? This is survivor's guilt, but not in the context of disaster or tragedy. In the context of personal growth. You look around and realize some of the people you love are still stuck, still hurting, still trapped in patterns you fought your way out of. And a part of you wonders if you're betraying them by leaving, by becoming someone they no longer recognize, by living a life they once dreamed of, but maybe can't reach yet. It feels disloyal somehow, unfair, like you've broken an unspoken rule. We struggle together, or not at all. You downplay your successes, you hide your healing, you shrink your joy just to make the space between you feel smaller. But no matter how much you dim your light, it doesn't take away their pain. It doesn't lift them. It only buries you, because their journey is not your burden to carry. Their healing is not your sacrifice to make. You can love someone deeply and still outgrow the space you once shared. You can honor their story without rewriting your own to match it. Your progress doesn't invalidate their struggles, and their struggles don't invalidate your progress. Both truths can exist at once. Both hearts can be held at once. And here's the most important thing. You don't owe your loyalty to your former limits. You owe it to your becoming. You moving forward isn't a betrayal. It's a tribute to the dreams you once whispered together, to the hope you once shared, to the possibility that someone, anyone, could make it out. And maybe, just maybe, your courage to move ahead becomes the evidence they need that growth is possible. That healing is real. That change, though painful, is worth it. You don't honor their stuckness by staying stuck too. You honor them by choosing life. Fully, fiercely, freely. Because every step you take toward who you are becoming is not a betrayal of who you've been. It's a celebration of how far you've come. The role of loyalty and fear of being disloyal. Some bonds are spoken out loud. Some are written in blood, or ink, or vows. But some, the ones that cut deepest, are made in silence. A quiet, invisible pact that says, we'll stay the same, we'll want the same things, we'll hurt together if we have to, but we'll stay together. And when you start to change, when you feel yourself pulling away from the old patterns, the old conversations, the old struggles, it doesn't just feel like growth, it feels like betrayal. Not because you've wronged anyone, but because you're breaking a bond you never meant to outgrow. We fear being disloyal to our beginnings, to the people who sat with us in our brokenness, to the memories we built from scraped knees and late-night talks and whispered dreams. We think, if I change too much, will they think I forgot? If I move too far, will they believe I stopped caring? If I become someone they can't recognize, do I lose them forever? So we hesitate, we hold back, we make ourselves smaller, quieter, more familiar than we really are. Not because we don't want to grow, but because we don't want to lose the hands that once held us. But here's the painful, liberating truth. Loyalty is not about staying the same. It's about staying honest. Loyalty doesn't mean never changing. It means loving enough to honor your own evolution and trusting that the people meant for your future will love you there too. It means recognizing that real connection isn't built on matching wounds, but on mutual growth, even when that growth leads to different gardens. It means letting people love you enough to let you go if they must, and loving them enough to bless their own path, even if it no longer runs parallel to yours. You're not disloyal for growing. You're disloyal to yourself when you don't. And no true bond is so fragile that it can only survive inside your past. The relationships that matter most, the ones rooted in real love, not shared stagnation, will find a way to adapt, to stretch, to deepen. And the ones that don't, they served their season. They shaped your journey. They deserve your gratitude, but not your lifelong confinement. Because staying loyal to your own becoming is the greatest honor you can give to everyone who ever loved you enough to help you get this far. Why change feels like betrayal even when it's healthy. You can know it's right. You can feel it in your bones. You can see the way your life is expanding. Your mind is opening. Your spirit is healing. And still, somewhere inside, it aches. Not because you're wrong, but because change rewrites the maps you once called home. When you change, you alter the unspoken agreements you made with the people around you. This is who I am. This is how I'll show up. This is what you can expect from me. And when you start breaking those agreements, even silently, even without anger, it destabilizes the emotional ecosystems you were part of. The friend who depended on you to always be available feels abandoned when you set a boundary. The partner who loved the old version of you feels confused when your dreams start to shift. The family that built their identity around a certain story about you feels unsettled when you step outside the frame. Even when your change is healthy, necessary, beautiful, brave, it still disrupts the familiar patterns others relied on. And because you are wired for empathy, because you care, because you remember the roots you grew together, you feel their discomfort. You carry it, you internalize it, and it manifests as guilt, as doubt, as a haunting question. Am I doing something wrong by wanting something different? But you're not. You're not betraying anyone by becoming more yourself. You're not abandoning love by honoring growth. You're not selfish for choosing expansion over repetition. It's just that growth isn't just about you. It inevitably ripples outward, shaking the foundations of the relationships and identities you were part of. And those tremors, those aftershocks of change, can feel like betrayal, even when they're the clearest sign of your becoming. Real betrayal isn't moving forward. Real betrayal would be abandoning yourself to maintain a story that no longer fits your soul. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to outgrow the narratives written for you. You are allowed to choose evolution over expectation. And you are allowed to grieve the losses that come with that choice, without confusing grief with wrongdoing. Because grief is not a sign you're going the wrong way. It's a sign you're walking through the sacred, tender threshold where one life ends and another begins. How to grieve the old without resenting the new. Grief isn't a punishment for growing. It's proof that what you're leaving behind mattered. And the way we move through that grief determines whether we carry it as a burden or a blessing. Because there are two ways to leave a chapter of your life. You can slam the door shut, resist the sadness, pretend you never cared, armor yourself against feeling. Or you can pause, turn around, bow your head to what once was. Let the sorrow rise, honor it. Thank the people who loved you at your worst. Thank the dreams that gave you direction, even if they were incomplete. Thank the version of you that did the best they could with what they knew at the time. You don't have to hate where you came from to move somewhere new. You don't have to resent the people who no longer fit your journey to keep walking forward. You can love them, love the memories, love the lessons, and still let go. Because resentment is heavy. It chains you to the past. It turns every memory into a wound instead of a gift. But grief when honored, becomes a bridge. It allows you to carry the best of what was into the beauty of what's coming. It lets you keep the laughter without the bitterness, the strength without the scars, the love without the regret. Grieving well is not about erasing the past. It's about giving it a resting place, a sacred space inside you that says, "You mattered, you shaped me, and now I choose to keep going." Because your new life isn't a betrayal of the old one. It's a continuation, a blooming, an unfolding. And the past versions of you, if they can see you now, would be proud. Not because you stayed frozen in time, but because you honored them enough to keep growing beyond what they ever dared to dream. Moving forward without losing yourself. There's a fear that clings to growth. Not just the fear of losing others, but the fear of losing yourself. The fear that if you change too much, you'll become someone you don't recognize. That in reaching for new heights, you might forget the ground that first taught you how to stand. But real growth, the kind that nourishes instead of numbs, doesn't erase who you are. It reveals you. The truest parts of you don't get left behind. They get refined, strengthened, clarified. You don't lose your kindness because you set boundaries. You don't lose your empathy because you choose peace over chaos. You don't lose your authenticity because you leave behind old expectations. You become more of yourself, not less. The parts that were costumes, the roles you played to survive, to belong, to be loved, those may fall away. And it will feel like loss, because in some ways it is. But the parts that are real, the parts that are stitched into your soul, they remain. They rise. Growth doesn't mean replacing your heart. It means listening to it more closely. It means asking with tenderness, "Who am I becoming? Is this path making me more honest, more compassionate, more free?" It means remembering that the goal was never to become someone impressive. It was always to become someone true. So as you move forward, as you step into new spaces, build new dreams, embrace new versions of yourself, carry the essentials with you. Your capacity to love without conditions, your courage to keep trying even when it hurts, your hope that refuses to die no matter how many times you fall. Let those parts guide you. Let them ground you, because you're not leaving yourself behind. You're unfolding into more of who you always were. And even when the path feels lonely, even when the losses weigh heavy, even when the new life feels unfamiliar, remember, the you who dared to grow is still you. Braver, softer, stronger, Still you, always you. Maybe growth was never just about reaching higher. Maybe it was always about learning how to love deeper and let go softer. Maybe it's not a betrayal to move forward. Maybe it's an act of profound respect for yourself, for the people who shaped you, for the journey that brought you here. You don't have to hate the chapters you outgrow. You don't have to resent the hands you can no longer hold. You don't have to regret the dreams that no longer fit. You can love them, honor them, carry their lessons in your bones, and still walk forward into the unknown. Because real love, the kind that endures through every becoming, is spacious enough to hold both memory and possibility. It says, "Thank you for being part of my story. Thank you for loving me at who I was. And thank you for setting me free to become who I am." Letting go isn't forgetting. It's remembering in a new way, a gentler way. It's carrying forward what mattered most, not in chains, but in threads woven quietly through the fabric of your future. You're not betraying anyone by choosing to grow. You're fulfilling the silent promise you once made to yourself, to keep becoming, to keep seeking, to keep stepping into the life waiting for you. Not because you stopped loving where you came from, but because you learned to love yourself enough to answer the call of who you are still becoming. Growth is not leaving love behind. Growth is carrying love forward, even if some cannot follow, even if some cannot understand. You move forward anyway, with gratitude, with grace, with hope, because your life is not meant to be a monument to who you were. It's meant to be a living, breathing testament to everything you are still unfolding into. And that, in the end, is the most beautiful loyalty you can ever offer to yourself, to your journey, to the silent, sacred becoming that never really ends.